All right, so our resin is cured. We are ready to paint the last layer. So I'm going to use the Paynes Grey, and I'm going to darken it this time just a little bit with some black. And then mix it together with my palette knife. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint my, stencil my deer. You could transfer an image and paint it, but I have this stencil here that I quite like, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to use a small stencil brush to start, especially with the antlers. And the thing with stenciling with the paint, less is more. If you use too much paint, you'll end up having some seep underneath your stencil, which is not ideal. So better to do a lighter coat and have to do it more than one time than to do too heavy a coat. And quite frankly, I might be doing too heavy a coat just because I'm trying to get it done within one video. So I might get a little bit of seepage, but what I'll end up doing is just probably cleaning up the outline if that happens. So I'm just going all the way around the edges, and it's just an up and down pouncing motion, and I have a small stencil brush here that I'm using. So make sure you lift it straight up. So, oh, actually no seepage at all, so that's perfect. So you want to lift your stencil straight up so that you don't have it smear when you lift it up. So now I'm going to paint a couple more trees, and actually with the last layer I had intended to add a pine tree and just kind of got so mesmerized with the other trees that I didn't do it. So I'm going to do a couple pine trees with this layer. So I'm trying to make sure that I don't completely cover my owl, but I just like the texture difference of having some pine trees as well as, oops, got a little hair there, as well as some bare trees. So this one here I'm going to do, and I'm going to make this one a little bit taller, or taller than the other one. Just like before, you don't want your trees to be exactly the same. You want them different heights, different spacing. This one's going to end up covering a little bit of the deer. And I'm using my little filbert brush here for this. You could also use a fan brush to do it. I just find I have a little bit more control with the filbert, and I just kind of like how it ends up a little bit better. I'm going to do a smaller one right here. So I have 3 of them, all of differing heights. And that's all I'm going to add for this layer. I'm just going to add a little bit of brush on the bottom of the forest floor here. And if you preferred not to do the pines, you could just do the same trees as we had before. I just like the look of the different style of trees, and it's more natural because in a forest you don't have, or where we live anyways, or where I live, you don't have just one type of tree. You have several different types of trees, so I just like the difference in the texture. And then same as the branches and stuff like that, make sure that your branches are unevenly spaced. If you go look at nature, you're not going to have everything evenly spaced, or you might have some trees that are symmetrical, but in general they're not really very symmetrical. So there we go. I'm going to let that dry completely, and I'll see you in the next video where we're going to pour our last layer of resin over top.